Hey there YouTube, how's it going? Nerdy Narwhal here, and I'm back again today for another 6-scale action figure review. Today we're going to be taking a look at an action figure that I'm super excited to finally have in the collection. It's one that I always knew I was going to get, I just didn't know exactly when. Well, that day was finally tomorrow. And that is the 1/6 scale, the Mask of Zorro, Zorro action figure from Blitzway. This is also the first Blitzway action figure that I've been lucky to get into the collection. So there's going to be a lot of new stuff to talk about, especially the quality of this piece. If you're not new to Blitzway, then you're already well aware of how nice their pieces are. And I was aware of it too, I just hadn't had one firsthand yet. So that's what we're going to be doing today. Thanks for joining, and let's hop in. Now, I suppose we could start off with talking about the character proper. I know that there have been a lot of other Zorros, and there have also been some other Zorro action figures. I'm talking specifically about the one from Triad Toys, and that was the original Zorro. But this Zorro was always my Zorro. This movie came out, The Mask of Zorro, when I was a kid, and it was Antonio Banderas, and he was playing Alejandro, not the original Don Diego de la Vega. And it was a passing of the torch, and this movie just blew my mind. After this movie came out, all the birthday parties, they were Zorro themed. All the kids were running around the bowling alley with the masks on, playing with their swords. And I loved it. It was just swashbuckling action. Zorro himself, as played by Antonio Banderas, was the pinnacle of cool. And when this came out, it just struck all the right chords for me, and I knew that I had to get it. So let's dive in there and look at that head sculpt. That's the sculpt I'm going to keep on there pretty much all the time. That's quintessential Zorro. He also comes with an unmasked sculpt, but this one is just perfect. He has a smarmy, kind of half smile, swashbuckling, confident, underneath that desperado hat. It is just real darn cool. Now, it took me a long time to get this figure. When it was originally solicited, I just don't think I had much of the Western sort of figures in the collection at the time. I had a couple, but not enough to really make a display out of it. I was really focused on the medieval fantasy sort of stuff, like I still am, but there just wasn't anything for him to go with. So I think I passed on it thinking, maybe next time. Also, the outfit looked a whole lot like the QMX Dread Pirate Roberts. I didn't want two of the same figure essentially in the collection, so it was passed on. And then the price for this guy skyrocketed. And so I've been real patient ever since. About a week ago, I saw this guy pop up on Mercari, and the seller was willing to do a bit of wheeling and dealing to bring the price down just a skosh for me, and I was real happy to finally be able to get this guy in, and he looks excellent. I wish I would have bought him several years ago when it originally came out. First, let's talk about the accessories that are not on the figure already. So, he is going to come with this posed right hand right here, and that's a nice elegant looking hand. I could see me putting maybe a wine glass in that hand, although I do think it might be for his cane. Or maybe I take that hand and I stick it up there on that visor. Whoa, my pose was a little unbalanced. There we go. Just sort of tipping his hat, and that would work perfectly for that too. Maybe that's what this hand is for. Either way, he comes with that right hand there. He comes with a left karate chop action hand. And I don't know, I probably won't ever actually use that hand, but it would also look good splayed off to the side maybe if he were swashbuckling. he comes with a relaxed left hand, and he comes with a more dramatically posed weapon holding right hand. And we will end up getting this on the figure later on in the review. He also comes with his cane, and that looks really nice, quite regal. He is Don Diego del Vega. So he's going to have, as a Don, a real nice looking cane, and he does. He also comes with an unmasked Antonio Banderas head. Let's get that out of the plastic so you can see it. There we go. It is just a marvelous sculpt. That looks really good. The skin tone looks excellent. I recently went back and rewatched the movie, and Antonio Banderas was so young. He didn't have a lot of wrinkles going on. He was just an absolute baby face, and they've captured his likeness super well here. Super well. I mean, it's an excellent looking sculpt. I'm tempted to use it in maybe another figure. Maybe I make a custom or a kit bash because it's such a nice sculpt. But I just won't be exchanging it ever for the head sculpt that's currently on the figure because there's no mask. It's not Zorro, but it is real nice looking. The skin tones, it's just soft enough to really exceptionally portray a young Antonio Banderas. So I'm happy with that sculpt. I think it's absolutely wonderful. Finally, the only other accessory that I don't currently have on the figure is going to be these crinkled up wanted posters. They look really good. They've come from the factory pre-crinkled and pre-wrinkled, and that is super nice. There's Alejandro Murrieta's reward from before he becomes Zorro, and he's just a big beard face. 200 gold pesos. And then it comes with this really nice map. I love these. They're great. And if I had the right kind of 6-scale table or something, or I built a more diorama display for my Western type figures that could include something like that, these would probably be on that table. And if I ever do that, I'll have those out. But for now, they're just going to stay nice and safe in the box. Now let's T-pose Zorro out and get into what I have displayed currently on the figure. First of all, it's his Zorro head sculpt, which we already did talk about. This is a real fun mixed medium piece. I'm going to actually set the camera down and adjust it up onto the head so you can see what I'm talking about. First of all, the hat is not going to come off, but it does have this string which will run down there and tie off. So plastic hat, plastic mask, plastic face, but real cloth good string. And once we rotate this figure around, you'll be able to see that the tassels in the back tied on there, where the mask hangs down, are also cloth. And that looks really nice. They hang down super naturally and really look good on the figure. Let's rotate him back around here now. There we go. The next accessory from top to bottom is going to be his cape. And again, they've picked a fabric, scooching back just a skosh. There we go. Which, as you can see, hangs so well. It drapes so nicely. I am a much bigger fan of a good drape cape in 6 scale than I am of anything posed or wired. And it's not because I haven't seen wiring done really well. It's just I'd rather have something that drapes down naturally and looks nice doing that than I would something that I sit there and fiddle with for, 30 minutes to an hour trying to make look like it's naturally flowing in the wind. I don't know. It's just a preference. I prefer this. And the cape is hung on the figure by a real fine metal chain running from clasp to clasp. Those clasps are plastic, but they look really good. They've got the red stone set in there, and they're crisp and nice. While we're talking about the cape, we also should probably talk about that elegant pattern that's running throughout the whole thing. I'm sure you could probably just barely pick it up on the sides there. There we go. Get the lighting on that. It's not a static black cape. It has a very regal inlet patterning going all throughout that, and it looks awesome. It looks phenomenal. That's something that I'm not even so sure I'd noticed when watching the movie, as a kid at least. And to see Blitzway pay such fine attention to detail that they were going to capture that in this scale is great. One final thing I want to talk about is just the quality of stitching going throughout the cape. If you can see this right on the side there, that stitching runs all the way down the cape, and it just adds to the overall quality feel of it. The figure does not come wearing this cape in the package. The cape is included in a separate tray, but honestly, I think it would just be absolutely criminal to not display this cape on the figure. It looks that good. I'm willing to say that this is probably one of the best 6-scale capes that I have ever had the privilege of handling, outside of items that I had commissioned or custom made for a figure. It is wonderful. Now, the next item I want to talk about is going to be that necklace. Again, it's all held onto the figure by a really nice small chain, so it looks as close to scale as you could really hope for. I'm going to zoom in just a bit. I hope we can capture the details that are in there. There we go. I don't know, you can't quite make them out, but that amulet is so finely detailed. It's really impressive what they were able to capture in this scale once again. Now I'm going to pan back and we'll talk about some other accessories. We already spoke about the cane, which I decided to stick into his right hand here. But we haven't spoken about his whip. And that is such an iconic Zorro thing. So you knew it was going to have to come with a bullwhip. Let's get that out. Great. And here it is. It comes all wrapped up in the packaging there. So it's still got some coils permanently in it. But you can get it to hang on the figure pretty naturally or wrap around his torso. That's it. Great detail going throughout. This is just a rubber piece for the most part. So they were able to get a whole lot of textured patterning in there, making it look really close to just like its real-world counterpart. And it's a long piece too. Right at about here, they switch it from being a rubber to being a cloth piece. And that string runs all the way down. And I absolutely love having Zorro be able to hold that iconic whip. I'm not going to worry about shoving that back in his hand right now. But this was primarily a swashbuckling movie. And what's any good swashbuckler without his sword? And Zorro comes with an excellent looking sword. Again, it's very regal. This is not the sword of a common fella. That's really nice. And it is metal, on the blade at least. The blade is full metal. So it's going to catch light so well. And that was such an iconic part of the movie, because this movie, it really operated off of the rule of cool. So the sword is going to catch light, and he's going to sit there, and he's going to pose, and he's going to look awesome with it. Absolutely everything to melt my child brain. And it did. Now, what I really like about their sword is the different materials they used. The blade is metal, but the guard is going to be a pretty crisp plastic, whereas this part that hangs up that could possibly get snagged is going to be a really nice soft plastic. As is this part of the hand guard, that too is going to be a nice soft plastic. And the handle is going to be not super malleable, but just malleable enough to where you can shove it into the hand without being too worried about it. And of course, if you aren't going to pose Zorro with his sword, it is going to slide right back into that scabbard, no problem. That detail is all over the sword. Let's see if we get to focus. There. What a nice looking piece. Absolutely marvelous. All right, now rotating the figure around just a little bit. Let's get that arm out of the way. We have our final accessory before we get to the more outfit section. And that is going to be this dagger here. Pull it out. It fits into that sheath real nice. And here we have Zorro's dagger. Again, it's going to be a full metal blade with a plastic handle. It's sturdy, strong, it catches light super well, it's clean, it's crisp, and it looks good. There's not quite as much detail on display here. Let's see if I can hold it right up to the camera, if it'll refocus for us. Come on. There we go. Well, you can almost make it out there. It has rivets painted onto it, so it's not just a flat piece. It looks really good. And we're going to slide that back into the sheath there. And now let's get into the outfit. Now, I modify almost every single action figure that I get. And that hasn't changed with this one, so I will go through what minor modifications I made to this absolutely wonderful figure. And it's nothing really to be worried about. So let's get him down there. First of all, he's coming to you with a really nice Renaissance style black shirt. So it's held together via these, I want to say those are leather tassels. Leather tassels that just tie throughout it and then hang down. The shirt itself hangs really nice and naturally on the body. The tailoring is wonderful. The stitching, it looks like a very accurate 6-scale representation of what we saw on the screen, which is good. Poofy kind of sleeves, excellent for mobility and all that swashbuckling. Coming down here into his belt. His belt is a rubber piece, which I am really happy with. I won't ever need to worry about flaking or wear or tear or anything like that. And it has a nice amount of detail all throughout it, with those little silver buckles. Let's get this guy flipped around. The belt can be, there we go, can be removed from the figure back here. And because it's rubber, that's not actually too much trouble to pop that belt off if you ever need to make adjustments to the outfit, sort of how I did. Let's get this guy rotated back around. There we go. And we are just going to move the belt up so that you can see the pants. The pants are a layered piece. So up top here, you have your button, and then there's this flap here, which I don't know what kind of pants these are. I've never seen pants like it. They seem pretty involved, but whatever. I'm not the one wearing them. Maybe they're period accurate. And the pants have these little silver rivets going throughout. And you do get extra ones of these in package, although if you handle your figures pretty much the same way I do, the quality here seems like those aren't going to pop off. Whatever glue Blitzway used to keep those onto the fabric in the factory seems to have held up just fine. Now, the gloves and the boots are a molded, rubbery kind of plastic, although there's not really much give in terms of being able to articulate at the wrist other than the swivel, and that's just fine with me, especially if Blitzway is going to include two different kinds of wrists for this sword holding hand, to allow us to have the sword going forward like a pokey or sideways for a slashy. I'm going to move that belt down a little bit, and we will talk about the boots, because yes, there is wonderful detail in those boots. Again, the sculpted molded plastic, but they have the buckles on there. There's texturing throughout, which makes it look absolutely wonderful. And now let's talk real quick about how I modified the outfit. As you can see, I've been moving this figure around a lot during this review, and I haven't had to go back and tuck any pieces back in, because when I first got this figure, upon any sort of articulation, you will want to be aware of this. It was really common. Let's get that cloak back on there. Nice, good looking figure, my God. Upon any sort of articulation, it was really common for the shirt to come untucked from the pants, or the bottom of the pants here, which tuck into the top of the boots. Those would pull out also. So I did a real simple fix. I just heated up some water, and I dipped the boots in there and popped the boots off once they got warm and malleable. I wasn't entirely sure what kind of ankle joint system we were working with Blitzway. But I was happy it was just a simple ball peg down there. So they popped off easily. And so I pulled the pants down about to where I wanted them on the figure, and wrapped a really thin piece of athletic tape around the bottom of the pants and the plastic leg underneath. And that's going to help keep those pants pulled down during articulation without anything popping up over the boots. So it keeps those pants tucked nicely into the boots there. And I pretty much did the same for his shirt here. I pulled the pants down and undid the belt here, and wrapped a little piece of athletic tape around the bottom of the shirt and the plastic body underneath. And that keeps that shirt tucked in very nicely for poses. Otherwise, the first few times I had him in different poses, I had to go back in there, and I just used the sword he came with, and I tucked the shirt back into the pants and the pants back into the boots. But I really didn't want to do that every time. So that took me maybe all of about 5 to 10 minutes to make those small, non-invasive and non-permanent modifications, which really took this figure up to being an absolute 10, for me, at least. So that's all. Let's go in now to articulation. There we go. For articulation, I figured we could get that cloak out of the way, as well as I could finally stop neglecting that absolutely wonderful Antonio Banderas sculpt, and get the figure stripped down more to about this for the articulation section. So let's go from the top to the bottom, starting with that head. I'm gonna scoot that figure up to us nice and close, baby. There we go. And adjust that to there. Okay, so the head is going to be pretty standard. It's just a ball that goes into the bottom of the neck there, so you're going to swivel around. What I do like is that Blitzway used a muscular rubber body, so there is also going to be articulation at the bottom of the neck. And you can push the figure to get some use out of that. So he will look down, and he will look up pretty darn well. As well, you can get some schmarmy swashbuckling side to side out of that too. Although this figure, or the unmasked sculpt, is a bit more serious of a face, so it could be a little more intimidating, are you serious, sort of face there. And to the right, there we go. Whatever kind of rubber they're using for that muscle body underneath, it works out really, really well. Blitzway killed it. Tons of articulation in the head and the neck. Moving on now to the shoulders, they are going to pop up into a pretty nice T-pose. And if you need more up than that, well, they do rotate forward and then they can pull out again. So it's going to be your standard 6-scale action figure shoulders. The joints feel tight, but not overly so. They're really smooth. That was one thing that I was really happy with upon my first Blitzway body into the collection here, was how smooth but still sturdy those joints all felt. Let's get this figure off to the side now, and we will check out those elbows. They are double jointed. There we go. So they are going to go all the way up. This outfit does not impede articulation whatsoever. There we go. There's also a rotation at the bicep. So you're going to get tons of crazy poses out of this guy, which is good. A character like Zorro needs to be able to pose really well. And that muscle body does not extend into the arms. So these arms are all hard plastic, hyper posable. The muscle body is just for this exposed portion of the chest. And it feels like the abs as well. Speaking of abs, I'm going to pull it off camera real quick to try to get a bit of a crunch. And I'm going to get a very little bit. So he will crunch forward about that far, and he'll crunch back about that far, but pretty good. Not great, nothing crazy, but it works, right? It works just fine. Zorro's hardly ever hunched over, unless he got punched or something like that. So now moving on to the legs. Here we go. The hips are relatively unimpeded by the outfit also. That is a nice, super soft, cottony denim kind of material, maybe a linen. I don't know, but they are loose enough to not impede the articulation at all. Those legs go all the way up. Those knees double bend right there. And as I said before, the ankles are on ball joints, and the boots are a soft enough rubber to get just a little bit of articulation out of that. They rotate just fine. But if you do need these boots in a different pose, heat them up a little bit, and then they become a lot more malleable, and you'll be able to get much deeper stances if that's something you are looking to do with your Blitzway Zorro. And all right, you guys, that is going to wrap up our look at the absolutely outstanding Blitzway Zorro 6-scale action figure. I'm sorry to do it to it, but this is another one of those pieces that has been sold out for a little while now. So if you are in the market for one, you know it's going to cost you a little scratch. Or just be patient like I was. You will find one maybe 150% more than what it retailed at, which really isn't too bad. Once these high-end 6-scale figures sell out, getting something for 150 to twice as much as it retailed for isn't too bad of a find, really. That lets the seller make a little bit of money on their original purchase, and it's pretty fair all around. Who knows? Maybe you find one even cheaper if you're patient. If you're not patient, though, you're going to be shelling out some pretty serious dollars. And that's fine because it's an excellent figure. It's wonderful to have this on display, especially if you were like me and you have very fond memories of going to bed, watching The Mask of Zorro every night as a kid, and having the Zorro-themed birthday parties, all that sort of stuff. This piece was vital to my collection for those nostalgia reasons. I got one more little pose with this guy here. There we go. One last swashbuckling pose, and that'll probably be more or less how I have him displayed in the cabinet. I'll make sure that this sword is angled to catch all the light reflecting off of my display. It's just so good. Just so good. Anyways, this has been a fun first look at my first Blitzway action figure. I knew they were quality, but I was a little bit worried about how fragile they were going to be, what sorts of things I had to look out for in comparison to a Hot Toys or a Coup model or a Sideshow, because all those pieces do have their own little things, right, that you know to just kind of be on the lookout for. Sideshow figures, they get loose joints really easily, especially at the hips, and you just got to be aware of that. But really, overall, this figure has been incredibly durable, supremely sturdy, and the joints feel smooth and absolutely dreamy to pose. I could articulate this guy all day and have a lot of fun doing it. And that's honestly what I've been doing since yesterday when it showed up on my doorstep. So I'm incredibly pleased with this Blitzway figure. I'll be paying attention and seeing if they get more licenses that I'm interested in. Some of their original artwork stuff looks really cool now too. I might end up needing to pull the trigger on that. We'll see. We'll just see. But up till now, they haven't really had a license that I thought, I absolutely need to jump on that right away. It's been cool things, really cool things like The Godfather, or I think they did a Hannibal Lecter, which was really cool too. But nothing like Zorro, right? Fight Club, awesome. But that's a movie that I loved in my adulthood, not one that I absolutely loved as a kid. So we'll just see. I'll have my eye on what sort of stuff they managed to get out. Let's rotate it. So good. Anyways, I hope you guys have enjoyed that. If you have any more collections or questions about pieces that I have in the collection, specifically this Zorro here, feel free to get at me in the comments. I'll gladly answer any questions that you might have about this piece to help you make an informed decision before purchasing, especially a figure like this, which I know is gonna run you some pretty serious money on the aftermarket. Anyways, if you have enjoyed this, maybe consider giving a like. Thank you. Stay happy, stay healthy, and keep on collecting. Bye-bye.